Hello, everybody, and welcome to issue 9 of the Retails podcast. How are you doing, Toby? How are you coping with the heat out there?
I'm good. It's one of the reasons we moved over here was we have a good solid summer. So we've been doing a lot of camping and getting outside. So it's nice, and it's been great. But a lot of the cities over the last couple of days, I mean, last weekend has feel like we're really starting to get back to normal.
Yeah,
a lot of the hoardings have been taken down. People are getting out. We've taken all the restrictions off, so masks are out. So it's feeling like a good fun summer, and I felt very homesick not being able to watch the football with all the crowds. I had to find English pubs to squeeze into, or English places just to cheer on the game. So I'm looking forward to Sunday.
I bet. And it's that hot, you're taking your beanie hat off. That's a first, isn't it?
Yes, I forgot.
I didn't know you had hair. I thought you were in denial, like I was for a while.
Yeah, it's a bit hot for the woolly hat.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, this issue, we have a very interesting lady called Claire Selby joining us. Do you want to just explain a little bit? Because I think you know Claire quite well.
Yeah, Claire's an old friend and kind of been professionally and personally kind of connected over many years. And Claire's been involved in not only in the more advertising and marketing space, and she's done some work with D&AD, but also has been connected with a lot of the academic spaces and has been working very closely with a lot of the students in Kingston and a couple of other universities. I'm sure she can do a much better job of explaining the past than I will. But what's interesting is that trying to mix the academic world that students exist in and with the more commercial world, and how do you get, whether it's internships or apprenticeships, or actually get students commercial experience and actually understand what it's like to be in the world. And recently she's done some really interesting, throughout the pandemic, interesting experiments with some of the buildings and looking at converting them into stores and making them feel very much like stores where students get some presence and so on. And I thought it'd just be useful because we've talked a lot about switching from kind of office blocks to retail and so on. And so she's had some sort of real world experience in doing that, and doing that whilst at a university. So I thought it'd be interesting to hear some of the challenges and some of the successes that she's had.
Brilliant. Well, let's admit Claire to the call, and we can find out a little bit more about what she does. Are you there, Claire?
Yes.
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Can't see you. Looks like a prison cell number you've got on your camera there.
Hold on.
Yeah, something's
Hi.
happening.
There we go.
I'm just trying to work out why my AirPods aren't working. Technology, brilliant.
Yes,
Connect.
gotta love it. Yeah, we can hear you okay. Can you hear us? Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, it's just not coming out of my AirPods.
Oh, right, I see. We'll do our best. We'll mime, hold up cards, subtitles if needs be. Well, thank you for joining us. I was having a chat with Toby a couple of weeks ago about, different guests for the Retails podcast, and he mentioned you, and I went to have a look, and I was absolutely fascinated when I looked through your LinkedIn and onto your website, which I'm happy to promote, which is selbyworks.com. But I think rather than me trying to explain, it's much better if you could maybe explain a little bit about where you are and what you do now, and maybe how you ended up in that place.
Gosh, that's hard. After kind of quite a weird year, I seem to have got into my flow and seem to be doing the best job I've ever done, particularly with this place, Not My Beautiful House. One of those things that just sort of seemed to happen by chance, but with a lot of hard work in the background. But I guess I've been working with students and young people since 2009, and I've always worked in the creative industries before that. What I've been able to do is harness sort of commercial projects and experiment with getting students to work on them, whether that be with people like Samsung or Barclays or Wrangler. We also did a lot of work with, and sort of being that glue in the middle that sort of makes it work and makes it happen and negotiates the cost and makes sure the students get paid. And I think that's sort of what I'm really interested in. Also really interested in the sort of intersection between art and the commercial world, So a lot of what I've been doing very recently is making students realize that they have got a value and they have got a worth, and how they communicate that to a client or a commercial partner. I'm a shopkeeper now, which kind of wasn't really part of the plan. But if I think back, well, actually my mum did it. It's really weird. She had a bookshop. She got interviewed on like the national radio because she was the only children's bookshop in the Northwest. She built a train that went in the middle that the kids would sit on and read. And I said to her quite recently, like, how did you think of that? Like, why did you do that? And she was like, oh, I don't know. And I suppose I'm a bit the same. I'm kind of a northerner, you know, I kind of just get things done. And there were no Gantt charts in this whole project. I worked very, very closely, and still am working closely with the student union on it. So it's been amazing to have a whole team who are, you know, dedicated behind the scenes to running the whole operations of the shop. And I just look at what it looks like and what's in there, and sort of oversee the, I guess, creative direction as well. And then alongside that, I'm obviously running Studio KT1, which is a creative agency out of the university. So I'm still commissioning students to work on projects, whether that be for internal clients within the university or external ones locally or nationally.
So can I just clarify, it's a creative agency where the students are effectively the employees?
Yeah, and I am the I don't know, the wrangler that makes it all kind of work.
Yeah.
So it's obviously a very lean model. But yeah, that's literally how it works. So
Fantastic.
A brief will come in and I will send it out to my little mailing list of students. If I can't find someone, I'll pick someone that I've worked with before, or that I know will be able to do a really good job, or I know that's really available. And I think during the pandemic, it saved a lot of them from probably despair, you know, sitting in a room, denied access to your workshops, your studio, your photography studio, whatever, animation studio. It's been quite a weird 18 months, or however long we're defining the pandemic as being. Is it still, I think it's still continuing actually. So yeah.
So
I think
I'm sorry, carry on, Toby.
Sorry, and I say what I've always been fascinated by the things that you've been doing is that over the years I've been involved in various kind of academic outreaches and kind of connecting to students and young people. But I think one of the things that I followed with a lot of your work has been actually making it feel more real. Like often that you have internships and you have apprenticeships and you have talks and you have hackathons and all those things, and they've always felt good but not great, in that they've been not really real. And so quite often brands will give a university a fake brief, and it's great because they feel they've done some good and students feel they get some experience. But you've gone a little bit extra every single time, and whether it's actually been made sure that the students work on real commercial briefs, and so they've got paid and there's a real value and there's an exchange going on. And I think Not My Beautiful House has been, it's kind of weird. It's like, I've known you for 20 odd years now, and it's kind of like, it feels like the doves that you kind of sent out a long time ago, that they're starting to come home, because each of them have built on other things, even might not feel like a trajectory. And this is the most kind of real version of all of those things, and says it really hones in on a lot of things that I think are interesting right now when we think about culture and the creative industries, that students are as valid, if not more, than any of the agencies, any of the kind of the people who are seen to be the experts. You just need to look at kind of TikTok and people making incredible content in an hour, and where the agencies are shitting themselves because they're like, oh, hold on, it's taken us 2 weeks to do this thing and thousands of dollars, whereas actually a student can, has all of the equipment in their hands now, and now you're taking all that and also breaking down the distribution part. The question I had is like, how, because I think we originally spoke about it months ago when we were talking about Canary Wharf, and were saying, what's going to happen with Canary Wharf? What's going to happen with these industrial hotspots of London when everyone's going to be working from home? So how did it talk about a little bit about where the actual location came from, and like the idea of actually putting it into an office space?
Oh, it's not in Canary Wharf. It's in Kingston, the shop.
Yeah, but it was
So,
no, we were talking about Canary Wharf, and it was just
yeah,
like it was
yeah.
one of those things that said we can use different spaces for that.
Yeah, yeah. So Kingston's a really interesting town. If you don't know it, I didn't know it at all until I went to work for the School of Art. Basically, it's a market town. Before the pandemic, they were the most visited shopping centre, as in town, behind Oxford Circus, Oxford Street. So they have a
Wow.
high footfall of people, really strong brands. They have a shopping centre, but it's super kind of, I can't remember what the consumer rating is, but it's kind of, they have an Apple store, they have, you know, all the really exciting brands. But what I started to notice 2 years ago was that there were a lot of vacant units, and we started to look at this, I'd say maybe early 2020, I think. And someone encapsulated it really well by saying, like, Kingston doesn't need to be Shoreditch because it's already gentrified, it just needs the cool bit. And I think a lot of the people in the council, or people, kept mentioning, we want to be Shoreditch, but, and it's like, no, you need to do your own thing. So we started looking at vacant units. We went and looked at some that smelt, some that felt wrong, some that had been vacant for a long time, some through Appear Here. And the location came about because we had a landlord come and pitch to us who has won planning permission to build a co-living space, which is really radical for Kingston. That's even further crazy than doing a pop-up. And he kept sort of saying, well, I've got an opportunity. And it turns out it was the PC world. So we basically set a brief for interior students and then art direction and design marketing students to kind of come up with the name, come up with an interior plan. You know, we had terrible, really awful flat drawings of the space. And then once you walk into it, we had to remix the whole thing. So the space came about from a landlord who bought into the idea of what we wanted to do. Whereas previously I'd had conversations with estate agents, one of who actually said, you'll never get a pop-up in a space in Kingston. And I'd love to remember who it was, because I'd quite like to call him back and say, did it? So that's kind of how it came about. It was kind of luck and someone believing in what we wanted to do. But then, you know, even though we've been in there, 6 weeks, my next focus is to actually find the next space. So we move out of there at the end of August, and we need to find somewhere else to house everything and continue the good work. So yeah, before we've even started, I'm on to the next one.
Brilliant.
What's the reaction been from from customers in Kingston?
It's been beyond our wildest dreams. So the first month we had 3,500 visitors. The average spend is £22. Most people are buying 2 items. It's kind of around, where are my figures? Like about 160 people a day.
That's great.
We had like over 100 applications to sell, and that's split quite equally between students, graduates, and then local people as well. So we've got some great products from people who just want to have a platform to sell it, because Kingston is very chain heavy. And obviously over the pandemic, a lot of chains have disappeared. So they're struggling to fill, I think it's something like 46 vacant shops.
Wow.
And because we've raised this, they are now putting together a kind of strategy for doing it. We were told by someone who came into the shop quite early on that apparently in Wimbledon, they have a policy where if a shop is vacant for more than 6 months, kind of this cooperative takeover, and then anyone can kind of pitch to trade from there, which is really interesting.
Brilliant.
Slightly different model to us, but I think it's a big thing that's now being looked at a bit more, because people are just so sick of seeing, you know, closing down sale, you know, really ugly units that just aren't in use.
But I think it helps you have a case study, because, you know, councils, I've been involved in some very primary conversations with some councils about the regeneration, and there's a budget being put aside to rejuvenate the high street. And it is hard work, you know, because you're dealing with government red tape, people who are not experts in the world of retailing who are suddenly being given a budget and have to allocate it. So there's nothing better than going, here's what we've already done and this is what's happened. It's like a flag in the ground they can respond to, isn't it?
Yeah.
And can I just ask, so the idea is that there can be all sorts of different people selling products within the space. That's the sort of offer. So will you have quite a changing number of tenants all the time? I suppose the great thing there, it gives people a reason to come back to see what the new products are as well.
Yeah, so this week we had a woman who'd come in. It was her birthday on Wednesday and she'd been in 3 times and she's seen every configuration that we've had. So for opening, it was a bit of a let's throw it together. It was, if I'm honest, it was the most hectic thing I've ever done, I think. And I've done a Mozilla festival with 1,800 people. So yeah, we were grabbing pallets out of the back, spraying them the same pink as the graffiti. It was a case of get these products on anything, even if it's not a shelf, so that we actually have things there. And I think one of the counsellors that came around on the first morning said, "Oh, when are you opening?" And I said, "It's today." Because that was kind of how sort of hectic it was. You know, people were quickly trying to hang canvases on things that weren't hangers. But yeah, I mean, it's remixing all the time. I went in on Wednesday. We've just had our shelves delivered that were made by product and furniture students. So we've remixed it again. We'll be remixing it when the current exhibition on William Morris comes out. There's a big feminist collective exhibition going in, and then also currently trying to activate the first floor. So we've just had I've just commissioned a graffiti artist to do a completely original bit of art upstairs. We've got some product and furniture students putting up their work, and they've kind of just painted the floor and done whatever they wanted. And then some architecture students are doing the same. So they've almost, I wanted to hand them the keys when we got in and say, here you go, like it's yours now. And they're kind of slowly doing that. I think the pandemic has affected them a lot more than people will realize, and confidence levels have dropped a bit. And there's a lot of anger as well and frustration. A lot of students are taking sort of a sabbatical or a year out to sort of reconfigure and regroup. But the nicest thing about it has been able to, you know, spot kids on Instagram who are doing amazing illustrations and then say to them, we need these in the shop. And they go, really? Me? No, yes, we want them. There's like a guy, he's called Jeffrey Windass on Instagram. That's not his real name. And he just does these amazing illustrations of footballers. And we need these in for the Euros. They've got to be in there. So yeah, it's constantly changing. We have panels to like a blind panel, so people will apply for their product to pitch it, and then different panels of people will select work to go in. So it will change all the time. There's loads of things we're lacking, but there's loads of things that we're selling really well. So candles are flying out the door. I think we made the girls who sell it, Bear Candles, just made so much money in the first month. It's terrifying. So yeah, it's been really interesting. I think people just realize that they want to support something that's independent. They want to support students. They want to support young talent, and that's really what it's all about. It's about using a shop front in a very different way that's really inspiring to people.
And
sorry, Ben, Toby.
Sorry, what's interesting is that one of the things that's interesting is that it sounds like a project that you could have done online. It sounds like a project that I'm sure I've seen online. You know, like being able to sell out things. You know, if we'd had Shopify on, they'd be like, oh, you could just build this website in 10 minutes with templates, but you know, your reach would be much higher. What's the I was gonna say what's the advantage, but like what have you found to be like different about having a physical store rather than just having a website?
Oh, it's crazy. I did actually think about this before I was chatting to you. It's once you put something out there, you never know who's going to walk through the door. And we had this a couple of years ago. So we took over vacant units in the big shopping centre next door. And people would even just come to the door and say, what are you doing? And you tell them, we're doing pop-ups. And they'd say, oh God, it's so good to see this. And it's so good to see this back in use. And you just never know who's going to walk through the door. There's a lot of angry men that come in and go, where's PC World? because that's what it used to be. And there's no calming them down. And it's almost worth keeping George as our security guard, because he then gets to deal with the angry men and we don't have to.
You need to start selling TVs. That sounds like it could be a very robust channel for you.
It could. High value items. Your question was, I've gone off tangent, haven't I? What's the benefit? It is just having that open door. And although we're not, we haven't even got the university's logo anywhere, it's not obvious that it's School of Art, and it's not obvious it's a student union thing until you step into the store. Then you've got our logos in there. But I think it's, as soon as people hear what we're doing and understand the concept, and we have it quite prominently up in the store above the tills. 80% goes to the seller, 20% goes to us to keep it running. People are they just like the fact we're so upfront about what the sales model is. And I think, to someone who's producing something, so we've got Janice's ceramics, Janice Gravit, I think she's called. She brought in her ceramics maybe a month ago, and they've almost all gone. She's restocking. Where would she have been selling that apart from Etsy? She wouldn't have got a slot. And then what's happened from this, I've been approached by 3 different other retailers or people who are looking to do pop-ups or markets in the town. So we're going to do a pop-up of a pop-up, which tells me that there is a need, or there is a hunger for original content, even if it's physical, to make, Kingston, if not anywhere else, a little bit different. So that's kind of the next model as well. How do you then start to develop that seller community, and how do you make sure that they're not being ripped off, which is, I guess, is what I'm doing with the studio anyway. I don't want to give my students away for less than £17 an hour, because that's the highest I can pay them.
One thing I did want to ask, Claire, was, is this like an extracurricular activity, or is like the shop or the agency, is it part of the curriculum, or could it become part of the curriculum?
Oh, that's such a minefield. So the studio started off as a project, kind of an internal excellence project. And the intention at Ravensbourne, where I worked before, the other university, was always to kind of have as many projects in curriculum as possible. You and I both know that industry deadlines, timelines just don't work the same as the academic timeline. It's very hard to embed stuff into a course. At Ravensbourne, it was really easy because it was so flexible. At Kingston, it's been quite difficult, but we have got a lot of projects into curriculum. With the shop, it will be difficult, but we did have, I think 6 interior students worked on the sort of zoning and the interior designs, and they were marked for their work and then paid as well. And then I think it was about 9 creative cultural industry students who worked. There was 3 teams of 9 that all pitched for the branding, and then 1 team won, and they continued. So sort of yes and no is the answer, but it's always complicated.
But I'd love to see that. The idea is you could have interior design students, visual merchandisers, the business design people, and you can almost go, right, the university has this store. So, you don't force them, but, one of your modules could be, right, how do you handle, window promotions, or how do you manage the finances of the store, and I'd love that. And I must admit, I went to art college where I did my foundation arts course in the 80s, never went any further than that because I realized I wasn't that good. I ended up selling it instead of doing it. But it was all about breaking down preconceived ideas and being, creative and pushing the boundaries. But what I noticed, and one of my friends said at the time, is what they never teach us is a budget and a deadline. You come out into the real world and you're designing this thing made out of solid gold that just like suspends in midair. And the brief is, it's got to cost £100 and we need it in 48 hours. Now, I've done over the last 2 years, I've done 3 guest lectureships at Falmouth and Northumbria universities. And I absolutely love how the commercial awareness and readiness for the market has advanced since my days in the 80s. You know, I was blown away. I mean, chatting with Stuart Watt at Falmouth, I went, this is incredible. You know, I went down for a day, I did a presentation, and then I sat and spoke to all 35 interior design students about their projects, and not one of them was a duff thing that would never go anywhere. Whereas on my course, 90% of them would have been really nice creativity, but unless you're going to be David Hockney, you know, you're doomed. So I love seeing that. And this is the ultimate commercial theme, because it's like when you said with the agency, there is, you know, Toby mentioned that sometimes people will go to university and they'll set a brief, but there's that safety net of knowing it's not real. Whereas what you're doing, that safety net's gone, and that psychology of this is absolutely real and we won't get paid if we don't do this right, you know, it takes away that safety net and adds that final element of commercial reality. And I think that's fabulous presentation, I think, you know, readiness for the market for them.
It was really interesting actually when we first got the keys to the shop and were able to bring the students in, because they were all sort of like shuffling around, and I kind of thought, oh god, okay, they're a bit bewildered by it, but they shouldn't be. And then I sort of thought, oh god, they've all been in their rooms for like a year, so they've probably not even seen each other in person. And then there's me like waffling on, you know, telling them what's going on and showing them around. And then suddenly they started to, it was really interesting, they sort of formed little groups, and then two of them came to talk to me, and then another one came up, and it was a really interesting sort of study in, gosh, that's how these times have affected people, because this was kind of very sort of mid-April, when we'd only just really opened up again in the UK anyway. So it was kind of quite a weird time. I felt very odd sort of traveling to a space and then meeting a load of students, because I hadn't been doing that for months. But yeah, I mean, that, as you say, it is real. And I think the interior students don't normally do projects like that. They render their kind of visualizations, and then they don't ever really go into production. And I got some really good feedback from the product students they were saying, you know, so much of university is about theory, but this whole project has been about practice. And they kind of gave us some quite funny feedback that was like, well, communication at times was quite difficult, and we were trying to spare them from all the dramas that we were dealing with on an hourly basis, which was graffiti artists, landlords, breakdowns of lift, electricity. You know, we were trying to spare them the whole drama of everything, but that obviously translated to us not always being communicative, but it did get to a stage. I mean, even when we were running the crowdfunder, I think I was doing like 12-hour days for about a month, because it literally, I don't know if you've ever done a crowdfunder, but that takes over your life. It's like a small child that needs feeding constantly. So I think that was interesting as well. That was an interesting experience.
One thing that you mentioned, I think, is becoming more and more clear as a byproduct is this sense of community. I think one of the interesting things, I grew up, my parents were both hippies and had their own little mini businesses whilst they're doing other things on the side. And I grew up in like craft markets, and so we'd go to these libraries and have these little craft markets.
That makes a lot of sense now. I know you, Toby. Now I know that background.
Well, it's funny. It's like this thing about, I think sometimes that doesn't matter what you do. Like there's a thing about, you know, if you have retail in your blood, you kind of want to do that. And I think one of the things I always talk about with so many sort of strategists around agencies is what we all really want to be as shopkeepers. I think that although it's like no one, you know, it's not a cool thing. It's that everyone wants to just want to shop. Anyway, the kind of craft market, the kind of craft market thing that I grew up with is that you saw the same store holders every month or whatever, and you would meet them, and they would all go for a pint of real ale afterwards. And Etsy's kind of done a similar thing where it's kind of created the community of sellers and folksy in the UK, and so many of them actually buy from each other. You know, like 50% off the income is as other Etsy sellers. And I think what's interesting is that you're creating a kind of community of students to not only think about retail, but what will happen is that you're going to create lifelong relationships. And like future, you might have an interior designer who wouldn't normally get to mix with a merchandiser or a business design student, and you're creating these little blobs and like, well, actually we can do this ourselves. And I think creating that sense of entrepreneurship as well as from an art point, I think is really valuable. And those mini communities, and as you rotate people in, you're going to have people who can come back and did it the first year and so on. So I think although it might be a byproduct, I think it's super valuable, that sense of community. Yeah,
totally. Like we hired like the first 4 members of staff, which was amazing, because that really feels like you're making a difference and you're hitting, you know, we got the funding from the Mayor of London, and, you know, that was one of the KPIs. And one of the students that we hired has done every single project that I've put through the studio. You know, she's Studio KT1, you know, she's through and through a brilliant ambassador. We're selling her work. She's working there. She is the living and breathing, you know, ambassador. So that's kind of really nice. And I think the community thing, she didn't know a lot of the students that she's working with. We've got a really nice mix. So we've got Imogen, which is she's a graphic design student. We've got Sean, who I can't remember what she studies. We've got Luna, who's a dance student, just graduated, so is always dancing around the shop. And then Imi, oh god, I've forgotten the other name. I'm going to get really ribbed for this, aren't I? But they've never met before, and they're all working together. Celine, that's it. So Celine is on the postgraduate art market appreciation. What a diamond! Someone who can, you know, work with the sellers to actually realize what their value and their costs are, and help them sort of bridge that gap between, oh, really my stuff, to, oh, it's being displayed. So yeah, we've got a really good skill set of people. And that is really interesting. You said that about the hippie stuff. So my mum was a crafter, you know, she sold peg dolls to, I can't remember, Longleat House or something. She made soft toys. She had a flower business. She had the bookshop. She was constantly creating stuff. And I guess I didn't realize quite how much of that had rubbed off on me. So yeah, I think you're right. It's sort of, everyone does want to be a shopkeeper, but I think a lot of people want to sell the wrong things.
Well, Well, Toba and I have talked for hours and hours about, you know, having shop's a great idea, but how do you do it right? And obviously everything's sort of shifted a lot at the moment as well, hasn't it? But I just love seeing the fact that they are getting proper hands-on experience of, you know, trying and failing and learning and succeeding. You know, it's completely theoretical until you rent a space, put your stuff in, stand back and see if the public like it and come and buy it. You know, because that's the absolute litmus test. Doesn't matter how brilliant your design is, if you don't engage the shoppers, it's a failure, you know. So you just think that when they finish, you know, they leave the college with that on their CV and the ability to talk very comprehensively about the realities of running a store, it's superb. I mean, I almost feel like you should franchise that to every university in the country. Not that you'd necessarily want to go through the logistics. The look on your face suggests one is enough, but you know, it's almost like it's a model that you could promote to other universities.
Yeah, I mean, I've suggested it to the student union that we need to trademark the name, and then we roll it out. It's just the resources, I guess. I mean, I think we could probably do it. I'll feel a little bit more comfortable about doing it when we've got the second site confirmed, I think, for this. But yeah, I mean, it can't be any harder, right?
You'd like to think the second and third ones will be easier, don't you? You hope so.
Well, it's also, what's interesting is that you've got so many cities that are kind of, I think that if you could create a playbook for connecting the councils with the universities, it's not like there's a shortfall of universities, a shortfall of cities that need things in the high street. So there is a market for it. I think it's just, like you say, it's trying to find national resource to support you.
I think we need to contact our old friend John Hoyle from Souk, who's been on our podcast, and Souk has set up like it's a pop-up model where you can rent by the hour, but he'll be massively well connected with the landlords. I mean, his background is in the property side, isn't it? So yeah, if you're serious about that, we can certainly put you in touch with someone who will either know or will know people that will know. So.
Yeah, we spoke to Sheffield Hallam, who have they have a shop, but they rent it out to students for a £5. So the students can then take over the whole thing and sell whatever they like. And I think John Moore's looking at something as well. I mean, we looked at loads of different models. Reso down in Southampton, I never got to go and see, but they're doing some really interesting stuff. And then my friend at Glasgow School of Art, they have a salt space. So they have 3 spaces in the rundown area of Glasgow, and one is a exhibition space, one is a maker space, and I think one is a community space. So I think we can flex the model to whatever space we have. But the funniest thing about the PC world is you kind of think, oh, it must be like a really good building, and it's kind of, fully wired. And it's not. The number of issues we've had with everything is quite dramatic. But, for some reason there's no power around the edges. It's all in the floor. It's so strange.
Different world, isn't it? I'm afraid we're running out of time. I have that wonderful Zoom countdown timer, which gives me massive anxiety when it starts on our recordings. But thank you very much. I personally would love to arrange to come and visit and have a look around. I'd love to write an article for LinkedIn on that. So that's a personal interest. But thank you very much for this. It's fascinating, and I've got so drawn into the student side of things with these guest lectureships. It's something I'm really passionate about, so I'm really pleased to see. It's a great idea. So thank you very much for that, Claire. Really appreciate you joining us, and I look forward to coming down and having a look myself.
Fab.
Cheers.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
And you. Thanks very much, Claire.
All right, bye.
Bye. What an interesting lady and a fabulous project, isn't it? Really cool.
Yeah, it is interesting to see if they can franchise that, because I think that's where it starts to really do well for that college and all those other colleges. And I think that the reality of running the store would be such a good experience for students. Exciting to see. It is.
It's fantastic. Brilliant. Well, we'll to let you get on with your day in the sunshine. And we're finishing on time again. That's 2 out of 9 we've managed this. We almost look like we know what we're doing now, which is interesting to see. But
and good luck on Sunday, everybody.
Yes.
I'll be excited to see how we do.
It will be.
All right, take it easy.
Yeah. Cheers. Speak to you soon. Bye.
Bye.